The theme for this morning is has to do with abundance, I think, or something like that. Well, I know that's what it has to do with. I'm just looking for the title. Experiencing abundance. Well, I'm not so sure that you're going to run away from here experiencing abundance, but I hope to be able to give you a few clues, a few things that might be useful to you. And first of all, let me tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to make a few comments, and one never knows how those are going to go. Then I do want to define some terms, because there's a lot of confusion around the terms that we use in this whole field of success, abundance, prosperity, and all that stuff. I think it's a lot of misnomers and a lot of misunderstanding there. And then I want to end up by giving you 4 basic, simple, straightforward, practical things that you can employ in your life to help you make that move from whatever sense of lack that you might be experiencing into a more expansive awareness of life itself. What was it I was reading last night? Marcia and I, before we go to sleep, we usually read something, and what we've been reading lately is a book called, and I want to get this straight because I mentioned it this morning and I said it wrong, Living with the Himalayan Masters. I said this morning, Living with the Himalayan Monsters, and that's not quite what it was about. Living with the Himalayan Masters, written by Swami Rama, a wonderful, wonderful man that I met many years ago. He's gone now. And in it, there was one sentence that really struck me. He said, "The purpose of life is expansion." Ernest Holmes said it very simply, the purpose of life is self-expression. And they're saying the same thing. As we expand, as we express what is really within us, we are able to then begin to embrace the goodness of life itself. There's a wonderful story that speaks to a kind of mentality that you might be able to relate to, and it appears in the second book of Kings, the 4th chapter, I believe it is, where it's the story of the widow woman. She finds out that her husband has died. Her husband was a very godly man, a good man, a student that provided well for the family, and she already had 2 boys. And what happened was that the man incurred a lot of debt, and the creditor came to her and said, "You need to pay up." And she said, "Well, I can't, I don't have it." He says, "Well, then I will take in payment for your debts your 2 sons, and they shall become my slaves." And of course she was very upset, and she's talked to Elijah, the prophet Elijah, about this. And he looked at her and she said, "Well, what do I do?" And he looked at her and he said, "What do you have in your house?" And this is interesting, the terminology. You think about this a moment. "What do you have in your house?" And she said, "Well, not much." A bit of a state of consciousness there. She says, "But I do have 1 vessel, 1 small jar of oil." And he says, "Take your sons, go back into the house, gather together all of the vessels that you have, the jars, the buckets, the whatever, and collect some from your neighbors, and pour into those vessels the oil that you have." She kind of mystified at this, but she went in and did as she was told, and she began pouring. And it wouldn't run out. She just kept pouring and pouring and pouring. "Bring me another jar, bring me another jar." She'd pour and pour and pour, and it just kept coming. Finally, at one point she says, "Bring me another jar," in which case she learned that there were none left. And that's when the flow stopped. Do you see the relationship here? Do you realize that this is a metaphor for each one of us? That the moment that we can conceive of a limitation, we are cutting ourselves off from the flowing substance of life itself. But so long as she could conceive of having something to receive, the goodness that was there was plenty. Now, just to give you the tail end of the story, it turned out all right. She was able to go sell a lot of the oil and pay off her debts, and she was back flush with life. But that's not the point in this. It's the kind of limitation that we place upon ourselves. You know, Eric Butterworth is one of my heroes. He's long gone. He's been gone about 4 or 5 years, I guess. He wrote some wonderful books, and one of my favorite, it's actually my favorite prosperity book or abundance book or whatever you call it. It's called Spiritual Economics. And he makes this comment in it, and that it's actually in your bulletin this morning. It's under that segment talking about what I'm talking about here today. He said, lack and limitation of any kind are aberrations in an opulent universe. An aberration, something that is not normal. Lack and limitation of any kind are aberrations in an opulent universe. Any person who is experiencing lack is in some way living in opposition to the universal flow. Wow. How am I blocking my own good, you may ask yourself. Interestingly, 2,500 years ago, Lao Tzu, the great Chinese philosopher, made this comment. The human spirit has its source in the divine fountain, which must be permitted to flow through humankind. Anyone who flows as life flows has solved the enigma of human existence and needs no further power. Anything is evil that blocks the flow of creative action, and everything is healthy, including prosperity, that flows with the universe. So it's a flow we're being told of. Everything is healthy that flows with the universe, or consistent with the universal process. And you know, and I look at this and I think of some of these ideas, and I realize something that may sound strange to you, because I'm not much into sin. You know, I've done all that I need to. Now I'm ready to get on with the rest of life. But the concepts of sin that are held by so many people, and they're held very dear to a lot of people, I mean, where would they be without sin? But I actually believe that it's not only our right to prosper, but it is our duty to prosper. And if we do anything less than prosper in life, that's the sin. We've made the mistake. You see, we've made a mistake that we have misinterpreted what life is all about and what it holds for us. Now, it's our nature to prosper. We know that. We've said it enough. We should know it, but we don't really know something until we embody it at the gut level. Everyone wants to prosper, I think. Now, while most people believe in prosperity, you believe in prosperity? This means yes. Okay, I'm sure you do. You believe in prosperity because we look around and we see a lot of prosperity. Now, I don't want to get into all of the things that are going on in the world where you don't see the prosperity to that degree. Let's just stick with what we see, what we feel, and what we know in this moment. We can handle those other things at some other time. Or I'll leave them to you to handle. That's better yet. But you believe in prosperity. Most people can, but they cannot conceive of it for themselves. A lot of people cannot conceive of it for themselves. And the problem is not in a lack of substance, but rather it's in the lack of a consciousness that can embrace that. Now, what I'm talking about here this morning, I'm not going to give you any techniques. I'm not going to give you any magic mantra or any special words that are going to cause you to open the coffers of heaven and the universe. God is going to regurgitate into your bushel basket all the things you knew that you always knew that you needed in order to be happy in life. But what I am going to do is give you some practical things that you can work with. Now, first of all, I want to define a few terms. Every system has its own jargon. And we use certain terms in the system that we call New Thought, or the success philosophies, or the positive thinking religions. whatever you want to call it. We use some terms so much. I think they're overworked, I think they're misunderstood, and I think they're misused, and probably because they're misunderstood. I mean, people just don't really understand what they mean. And the three words I want to look at are affluence, wealth, and prosperity, very briefly. If you look at the word affluence and look it up in a dictionary, what it literally means is free flow. A lot of people look at it and say, well, he's a very affluent person. They think, oh, he's got a lot of stuff, got a lot of money, or a lot of something. But it means flow. It means the free flow, just like a river, an affluent river freely flows, okay? A person who is affluent in life freely flows with whatever it is that seems to show up as his affluence. Then there's the word wealth, which is a synonym for abundance. And interestingly, originally the word wealth meant well-being. Now a lot of us think of wealth, again, as a lot of stuff, a lot of things, a lot of money. But it really means well-being. And then the word prosper is one I really like. And in my dictionary it says that to prosper is to thrive, to flourish, and to succeed. Wouldn't you like to thrive, flourish, and succeed in the endeavors that you undertake in life? And if you go back and take a look at the Latin roots of the word prosper, the verb to prosper, you find it means to go forward hopefully. Isn't that interesting? So it says nothing about things or stuff. You see, each of these definitions is about activity or a process or some kind of a flow. It's not about a result or an end. Prosperity and poverty, both, is a way of thinking, it's a way of living, and it's just not about having money and things and stuff in your life, or, as in the case of poverty, about not having it in your life. And yet this is what a lot of people get caught into. And they get into these teachings and they think, oh, I'm going to learn all about affirmations, I'm going to learn all about affirmative prayer, I'm going to learn all about blah, 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 and I'm going to be able to get everything that's going to make me happy and fulfill me. But you know, one of the common errors, I think, is, and I call it the preoccupation with demonstration. We talk a lot about demonstration. You really want to be a good metaphysician and show how spiritual you are, learn how to demonstrate. You want a new car, demonstrate the new car. You want a new house, demonstrate the new house. You want a new wife, demonstrate well, get rid of the other one first, and then demonstrate the new one. But you know what I mean? But one of the things about this, focusing on demonstration, and I am all for that, and I teach about this sort of thing, but there is an error built into it a lot of times when people are working so hard on their demonstrating, their preoccupation with it. What they are really doing is sometimes they're flying right in the face of a demonstration. What I mean by that is they're perpetuating their lack. You know, if I were to continue to emphasize over and over and over, I have to have such and such, and I am going to get it, and I become intense with it. You know, by the end of next week, I'm going to have that brand new car that I love so much, and I saw it advertised on television, and I went out and drove one, looked at the brochures and everything, and my heart is just spinning and expanding over it, and that's what I want. So I start my affirmations and I do my treatments. Sometimes what we end up doing is actually pushing it away from us, because of the emphasis is so strong that what we're really doing is affirming that we don't have it. Do you see how that can happen? I say, well, what do? We learn all about spiritual mind treatment and positive prayer and all of that stuff. Well, we shift our consciousness. How much better it might be to say, this exists, I really like it. I accept it into my experience because the universe is abundant, the universe is opulent, and I know this is what is perfect to satisfy my need. So I open myself to allowing it to happen. Do you see the difference? Now, that will change for you. You will say things, think of things in ways different from the way I will. But it's time that we begin to start looking at the way we approach things. Sometimes we perpetuate lack in our life by affirming what we think we want. And what we're doing is we're denying the basic principle that says that we are surrounded by substance.